You are tuned into breakfast here on 88.6 FM. And this evening, 13 Garrett Street is hosting Tales from Nowhereland, an hour of storytelling from Ted Mills, supported by poet Renee. Hailing originally from Santa Barbara, California, Ted's been here in Te Whanganui Atara for 2 years now and is here for a chat about what's brought him here, his practice as an artist, and an exclusive live-to-air reading for us here on Breakfast. Morena, Ted.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, good morning. It's great to have your voice here on a radio. So you moved here from California 2 years ago.
Yes, I did.
And what originally drew you into the art of storytelling?
I think that's something I've been doing since I was a little kid, and I started as a short story writer back when I was a wee lad at 15, and then that turned into filmmaking, and that turned into all sorts of other narrative art, and then that turned into video art, which is how I wound up here at Massey doing my MFA in video art. And then for a show about a year ago, I was showing work, but I was showing my videos, I was showing my photography, but I had all these stories left over, and I thought, what can I do for the opening night instead of just wine and potato chips? And so I'm going to read some of these stories I've been sitting on. And then that's where it started.
Yeah, because I was wondering what kind of brought you here to Aotearoa, and have you been introduced to kind of a new way of storytelling or hearing other people here that's kind of inspired maybe a different thing that you didn't see back in California?
I don't know if my art is particularly Californian. I mean, that's not for me to judge. So I'm influenced by all sorts of things, but I think I'm influenced a lot by the 1980s performance artists like Laurie Anderson and Eric Bogosian, to be honest, which eagle-eared listeners will probably cop. So.
Yeah. Well, you have just said that you finished your MFA and you're about to do a PhD.
Yes.
So what are you kind of focusing on in your PhD?
Well, I'm going to, I hope, it's early on, right? Don't plan too much. But I envision a combination of this sort of storytelling with video and performance and live art and a bunch of things all mushed together, where I want to talk about cities for one thing. I want to talk about how, especially someone in my position as an immigrant here, to be in a city, but then you also kind of overlay your own city on top of a city. Mm-hmm. You understand cities by your old experience, and so there's a lot similar between Wellington and Santa Barbara.
Yeah,
but a lot of differences, obviously. Public transportation for one, but there's the sea, there's the city, there's a grid system, and then the grid system gets wiggly as it meets low hills and mountain. Then there's a mountainous region, and so like when I first came here, I kept seeing things that would remind me of Santa Barbara, and then I'm like, oh yeah, but it's different.
but it's different.
They're like ghosts, kind of. It's like a ghost overlay. So. I'm working with that.
Yeah, it's really interesting to hear from you what similarities we do have here in Poneke to Santa Barbara. And I was wondering from this, how important, I guess, is our environment and location in the art of storytelling and creating these films, but also stories that kind of play back maybe of memories of where you've been or where you're going?
The stories so far, well, you'll find out tonight when you turn up. But the stories they exist in, I mean, some are like in the California desert, but some are a lot are institutional. This is an institutional story we have queued up here, and they are just they're dream spaces.
Yeah.
So there's a lot going on, and like there's one I'm going to read tonight, which is set in the Midwest, and I've never been to the Midwest. So it's the power of storytelling, folks. You can make things up.
And because the overview of Tales from Nowhere is a show that you've created where you read out these dreamlike stories that are meant to invoke mysterious 2 a.m. radio broadcasts, which is very interesting here on Breakfast from an unknown station. So where did this incredible idea come from? Because I can see in your brain you were like, this is specifically for 2 a.m. radio.
I like the idea of driving at night, or maybe you're in your room at night and turning on a station. I have old memories of having my family comes from the UK, and so I have these memories also of having a radio and turning. It was one of those radios where you could get the short wave and the long wave, and just hearing things come out of that, and not knowing where that is. The thing with the internet is we know exactly where. There's like not a lot of mystery left. You can find out who people are. But decades ago, you had no idea who this person was, what they look like, and that's a mystery I like to kind of work with.
Yeah, you can imagine the person behind the voice kind of thing in your own head without having to research who it is. And you're right. I think now media has made things, I guess, more accessible, but also a different take on the art of storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
There isn't that same mystery that we used to have when we open something up and maybe haven't heard of it for the first time.
Yeah, I think also there's a lot of personal storytelling, and I'm going to front load the story with the fact that this didn't actually happen to me. It's called fiction.
It's called fiction. So the stories that you are sharing, we get to hear an exclusive here on Breakfast this morning. So I'm going to hand over the broadcasting reins to you, Ted. You have got a story for us all. So enjoy, everyone. If you are out there in the car, do turn this up. And I guess imagine that we're at 2 a.m. somewhere in the world.
That's right. Yeah. Okay. Let's get that mix. This story is called Green Day. A few years ago, I worked at a mental health hospital to pay the rent. It wasn't a particularly good hospital, but it wasn't as notorious as some of the others in that part of the country. The hospital was a sort of sweet spot, a sweet, invisible spot. Me and a few others were in charge of the patients, and nobody was really in charge of us. We'd play pranks on the worst patients. Now listen, I've changed a lot since then, and I'm not going to pretend some of the things we did weren't terrible and completely unethical. But I'm also not going to pretend that some of the things we did didn't make me laugh. And we all had to laugh, because otherwise it was so bloody grim. When Christine joined our crew, I thought we'd have to shape up. She looked so serious, but she was also so beautiful. She told me she was Vietnamese American. She was an army brat. She had seen some shit. Her hair was cut straight and cut at an angle like a knife just above her collarbone. When she'd lean over me to watch the closed-circuit television, the edge of her hair would touch my hand. I'd have to keep my composure. I'd have to work out my feelings once I got home. Pretty soon, she let her guard down. Once she caught us pranking a patient. Instead of reporting us, she told us she wanted in. And so every Wednesday became Green Day. This was her idea. She made the patients wear large green buckets over their heads and stand in the day room. We drew faces on the buckets, and we told the patients not to move, and then we took bets on who would move first. It was hilarious. They would eat shit all the time. It really helped morale in the office. Christine started to flirt with me, but I could never work out what to do. To be honest, I was kind of terrified. She had a jarhead boyfriend who'd sometimes pick her up, and he'd seen me a few times, and he just seemed to know I was into her. Anyway, She had started to train for a triathlon and was bringing in these really noxious teas to drink to raise her metabolism. You'd see all these seeds and roots and twigs in the bottom of her cup, and it all smelled very medical. She kept telling me it was all natural, and I couldn't understand half the ingredients. I just took her at her word, and she kept wearing tank tops to show off her shoulders and biceps. Her guns, she kept calling them. One Wednesday, it was Green Day, and we were in the break room. Christine was sitting opposite me and told me to stand up. When I stood up, she placed her lower legs across my chair and told me to sit down on her shins. I did so, and she used my weight as leverage to lean back off her chair and proceeded to do stomach crunches. I stole as many looks as I could at her abs. It was ridiculous. She didn't seem to need her chair either, like the floating lady in a magic act. That's when Jeff came in the room. He was a complete doofus and was plainly jealous that I got to sit on Christine's legs. "Your form is off," he said. Christine sat up and turned to face Jeff. That's when I noticed Christine had a slice of raw bacon running along her jawline. I had no idea when she'd placed that on her face, but then again, I'd been looking at her abs. "I used to work in the hospitality industry," she told Jeff, "but I lost that job, and that's why I work here." Her voice cracked, and I realized Jeff had made her upset. "But they pay me less here," she said, "and this is why I have to wear this, for healing." She pointed at the bacon. Then she turned to me. She wore a look of betrayal on her face. "I saw you looking at the bacon," she said. Then the day room alarm went off. Christine and I ran to the day room to see that the patients were now fully agitated, running into each other. The sound of bucket against bucket was ridiculous, but it also sounded dangerous. Christine jumped up on a table near a high open window. She looked to a cabinet, and then to a high railing, and then to a window. She was planning her escape. "We're going to have to do some parkour to get out of here," she said. "It's quitting time." Then a voice came over the tannoy system at the opposite end of the room. "This is local television. We do not have the budget to show you such an action sequence." And when I looked back, Christine was gone. It was the last time I saw her.
Wow, that was a real treat here on Breakfast. So incredible. Thank you so much, Ted, for sharing. It kind of reminded me when I was a kid, my dad used to spend hours and hours every single evening reading my sister and I books. And it was like one of my favorite memories growing up because we didn't see any of like the films weren't out there of the books that we were reading. And you make up all these kind of stories. And it really took me back to that place of I've never heard this story before. And we get to hear it here on radio. So what kind of drew you to that story in particular?
It just certain things come up in my mind, daydreaming, dreaming, and such, and then I just I sit down and start writing, and then it starts to write itself.
That's so incredible because when you do write a story like that, are you someone that kind of has to take a section out of your day and be like, okay, now I'm going to sit down and write this? Or do kind of the ideas come as you're watching and taking in other kind of creative arts?
I have no, I don't think they're not like influenced by things I go out and see. They come to me. They're signals themselves. They're radio signals from somewhere else, and I just play with it and I go, what can I do with this? Yeah. And then, as I say, I'm not trying to fob it off like it's magical, but it kind of is magical.
Yeah. It's also really cool to hear a story that kind of keeps the listener or keeps us out thinking, what's next? Or where does the story come from? You know, you dive into something like that, and I just think it's incredible that you've been able to share that with us. So for tonight, you're going to be reading other stories that are all written by yourself?
Yes, 7. Some. If people saw me at the City Gallery, there's a couple from there, but there's mostly new stories, and all different styles, different loops, different tones, different vibes. Some are weird and perverse like that, and some are a bit more romantic.
Yeah, that's really cool. And you've also got Renee who's joining you, who's a
Yes.
poet. Have you seen some of Renee's work before?
No, this is the first time.
The first time. That's pretty incredible. So for the night, it opens at 6:30, right? And then
Yeah, doors at 6:30.
and
We
then
start at 7.
Yeah, and it's at 13 Garrett Street. So where can people find your work, but also get tickets to tonight's event?
You could go find me. The easiest one is to go to Instagram, which is just at Ted Mills, TEDMILLS, and link in bio, as they all say. So link in bio, and you'll see the Eventbrite page. But it is RSVP. You have to. It's just more to hold your space, and then you pay at the door.
Oh, awesome. So you RSVP first and then pay at the door to
Yeah.
make sure that you can make it on the night.
And there's a Kohat too.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Ted, for joining me this morning. We're very grateful to have you here on this show. And if you want to go check out Ted and Renee tonight, do go and RSVP. You can head to Ted's Instagram. It is at 13 Garrett Street, where people can grab tickets. Wonderful.
Thank you.